afternoon and welcome to this special show, COVID-19 Pandemic, coming to you live from our studio in Freeport, Grand Bahama. COVID-19, the coronavirus, continues to make its way across the world. And here in the Bahamas, the latest figures show that there are some 80 cases in the country. 7 in Grand Bahama, 8 in Bimini, 1 in Cat Key, and the remaining 64 in New Providence. 22 persons have recovered and the country has recorded 11 deaths. To date, we have close to 800 persons now in quarantine. Well, some government offices have reopened, but operating on reduced hours, and customers are encouraged to follow the proper protocols. One such agency, of course, is the Road Traffic Department, and our Jay Philippe stopped by and checked that out earlier today.
The Road Traffic Department recently reopened to the Grand Bahamian public. Wellburn Boodle, Deputy Controller of Road Traffic in Grand Bahama, says even though this is a busy time with the end of the month approaching, the vehicle licensing process has been smooth.
So far we've been social distancing. The process has been running smoothly. When we have the process, you only come on the inside of road traffic if you have a credit card payment. But those ones who are paying cash, they're on the outside. If you notice, I have my runners going back and forth. They're collecting the item from you after being sanitizing those things and then returning those items to the customers. But so far, everything has been running smoothly.
Boodle says the process that has been implemented at the Road Traffic Office has been successful.
The process has been running smoothly. Persons are listening to what we say. They're coming in and they're moving, in quick time, But what we want to also advise the public not to wait until the final minute. Today, we're looking at now the end of the month, and this is when everyone want to come out at this time to license their vehicle, especially during the COVID-19. We would like to see them come earlier in the month before the ending part of the month. So the process will be that much easier for them, and it will be also health-worthy for them. So it's not advisable. If you go on the outside now, you'll see we have some older persons who are there who really shouldn't be here now. They should have already completed that process. But all in all, we're trying to get them out in quick time.
As far as day-to-day operations, Boodle noted that employees at the office has been doing their best in practicing social distancing.
The employees, I must throw kudos to them. They came in and they worked. They put their shoulders to the wheel and they're trying to get this thing done. They understand what's happening now worldwide, and then it's no different here in the Bahamas. And so in our work area, especially the work area, we're keeping the area sanitized. We are the distance. We are honoring those distances, and so right now we're doing a fantastic job.
I'm Jay Philippe, ZNS Network News.
Well, here on Grand Bahama, the Office of the Prime Minister announcing the launch of its digital platform to help residents navigate safely through this COVID-19 pandemic. This new platform provides an avenue for residents to have their concerns answered. Here's Jamila Mizik with this report.
The Office of the Prime Minister in Grand Bahama today officially launching an information center. Minister of State for Grand Bahama, Senator the Honorable Kwesi Thompson says, since the COVID-19 pandemic, they've realized that persons are unable to physically come into their office, which is why they've created a way to reach the public, giving them an avenue to get their questions, comments, and concerns answered.
We know that there are a lot of questions and a lot of concerns that the public has, particularly when it comes to emergency orders, lockdowns. Specific businesses have questions. People in general have questions. And so we wanted to make sure that we made ourselves digitally available for persons specifically in Grand Bahama. And we know that a lot of the messages and numbers that have been coming out have been national in its nature, and we just wanted to make sure that we stay connected with local Grand Bahamians.
The minister is inviting residents to contact their help desk, which is staffed with knowledgeable persons between the hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., email them, or utilize one of their other social media platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp.
We try to respond back as soon as we can. Definitely within a few hours, we will get a response back to you. But if it is a bigger question, then we at least will acknowledge the receipt of it and will get back to you with respect to a specific answer. So we want to encourage persons to come and to make contact with us and stay connected to the Office of the Prime Minister in Grand Bahama through these means.
Minister Thompson says the COVID-19 pandemic has provided them with an opportunity to fully utilize the digital means by bringing more services to the public through online platforms.
Social services and NIB have even taken it a step further in that they are looking at digital wallets on how people can receive their benefits. So persons no longer would have to actually line up to collect the check that they have to go and cash at the bank, but they can use their cell phones and receive their benefits by way of a digital wallet, and they can then use that same digital wallet to purchase items from the food stores, and if they want to get cash as a result of it. So we're using technology to be able to make things a bit easier during this time.
Jamila Mizik, ZNS Network News.
Well, Therrell Smith joins us live now in studio, and she's from the Infection Prevention and Control from the Grand Bahama Health Services. Really, you guys have been at the forefront of this COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you so much for being with us today, Therrell.
It's always a pleasure to be here with you, Sheena.
And of course, we start off by saying that we are physically distanced from each other at least 7 feet, so that's why we don't have on our masks, and we are complying. These are for the persons who continuously ask where is their mask. So we begin today, firstly, let's talk about testing, Therrell. How many tests have been done on the island of Grand Bahama so far?
So to date, we've had 54 persons tested on the island of Grand Bahama. We've had 7 positives. 2 of those positives, as you know, would have been deceased, unfortunately, and 5 persons have recovered. Recovered meaning that they don't have any more signs and symptoms, and their test post not having signs and symptoms would have come back negative.
And how many persons would you say would be having quarantine at this point?
We have 7 persons in quarantine at this point.
7. So we are
really at home,
doing relatively well in Grand Bahama. I know many Grand Bahamians are proud to say that we've had no new cases for at least about 17, 18 days now.
Right. We're very proud of that at the Grand Bahama Health Services, very proud of the general public, working along with us to reduce our numbers and to ensure that everyone is complying with the health measures that have been suggested by the healthcare professionals.
Talk a little bit about what you guys are dealing with at this point. Are a lot of persons still coming in believing that they're presenting with these symptoms or presenting with these symptoms?
Actually, we don't. Persons usually don't come in and say, I think I have COVID, right? So they come in presenting sometimes a wide array of symptoms. And initially, the COVID symptoms we focused on respiratory symptoms, fever, cough, cold. But as we evolved, we realized that there were other symptoms also presenting with this illness. So persons may have come in with complaining of upset stomachs, diarrhea, etc. So persons usually come in complaining of symptoms, and then based on their clinical presentations, the physicians and clinicians would deem them as suspected COVID cases. And so our numbers have been down lately. The Accident and Emergency Department has been filtering primarily accident and emergencies, as it always should have been. The general public is now complying with those measures. The public healthcare clinics are being utilized for the non-urgent cases. And so our numbers are relatively being down.
Now, we've seen in Nassau where medical professionals have been greatly impacted by COVID-19. What has been the case on Grand Bahama? We haven't heard much about that.
Right. Well, you know, preceding COVID, we were greatly impacted by Dorian. So our healthcare sector, in terms of personnel, had already taken a great hit. So the coronavirus just kind of complicated things a bit for us, meaning that we had to stretch our already thin resources even thinner, especially with establishing more triage centers, etc. The healthcare professionals in Grand Bahama, I can say, are very resilient. They've all stepped up to the plate. and have accommodated all of the measures that we've put in place to try to screen persons, triage, to ensure that we're treating persons appropriately. However, you know that this virus has taken an emotional toll on all of us. And so even though they are not in quarantine at home, they don't have the battle of feeling cooped up inside, but the battle is returning to work every day in a very unpredictable and volatile environment. And of course, especially for nurses and physicians, to some degree becoming emotionally attached to patients and then seeing them very ill. And of course, we had 2 patients that would have passed away as well. We've also had healthcare workers that were affected in the fact that they had to be sent home for quarantine after exposure. So our numbers weren't as great as New Providence, but we also were impacted in that light. And of course, that would have been a great challenge for us as well, because our numbers in terms of healthcare personnel was already down after Dorian. So having to send about 20 healthcare workers home for quarantine for 14 days was a challenge. So those that were left behind, once again, stepped up to the plate, and they met the demands of the center.
And of course, we have persons tuning into our live coverage from Facebook as well. Elsa Carter asks, are people on Grand Bahama being tested, and are they being tested regularly?
So persons are being tested when they present with signs and symptoms. We're not doing general testing, if that is the question. At this point, our resources don't allow us to do so. And really and truly, we've had no indication that we need to do a widespread screening of the general public. Okay, so persons that would present with signs and symptoms, even if it's just an unlikely relationship in terms of symptoms, physicians would deem whether or not they need to be screened. And those would be persons at home. If they call the COVID hotline presenting with symptoms, maybe they can be managed at home. They may be screened at home, or if they present to one of the healthcare facilities, they're screened there. And of course, at the emergency room, if they present and need to be admitted for treatment.
Franchelle Jones-Welshcombe says Grand Bahama is really doing well. And as we would have alluded to earlier, Grand Bahamians are proud that we are indeed complying for the most part. Even when you go out on the streets, it's pretty clear that Grand Bahamians are taking this seriously. And for you as a medical care professional, this is important for you as well.
Definitely, because it puts all of us at great risk. And so we are very proud that the public has heeded the warnings and are complying with the mandate to stay at home when not in need to go out for those essential services. We are very proud to say also that despite our current situation with the facilities, persons have not flooded the emergency room with non-essential healthcare needs. So, you know, they've utilized the general clinics, etc. And I think that Grand Bahamians should be very proud at this point in time. Of course, that doesn't mean that we let our guard down. We have to still be very vigilant.
Right.
You know, we're cut off from everybody else. And so it's expected that our numbers are down at this time. But the reality, Shoshana, is that we don't know if COVID is going to disappear, right? So we are one of the closest islands to Florida. And when the borders open, the true test will begin again. And so we can be slack in our behaviors. We have to be consistently vigilant. And of course, we have to be aware also that we do have asymptomatic carriers. So we have persons that may have no symptoms at all. And so if they slack off and decide to throw a party and everybody comes over, then we have a spike again. So we need to be very consistent and very vigilant.
And we would have seen that in Bimini, where you know, we had someone diagnosed with COVID. Unfortunately, she would have passed. And then weeks later, we hear nothing about Bimini, no more cases. And then just this weekend, 5 confirmed cases out of the blue. We spoke to Pastor Oral Ellis yesterday, and he said that was a shock for their community.
Right, because they all thought that they were past the 14-day quarantine period.
Correct.
And they were in the all clear. And so once again, vigilance. You know, everybody has to comply, and everybody has to do make personal efforts to do their part to ensure that we are not going to have a spike again.
We heard during the last press conference that there were some challenges with swabs on the island of Grand Bahama. Can you give us an update on that?
So we haven't had many challenges recently. I think the challenges came because of resources worldwide. This wasn't something that was exceptional to us. I also think that it came because of the shutdown. So after the island was closed off, we had to figure out how are we going to transport back and forth with the airport being closed for general aviation. And so that challenge was also met.
Shazaria Miller asks, can people who stay at home still be at risk due to the amount of persons in their house because the disease is easy to catch to all persons?
Right.
Let's talk about how highly contagious this disease is, or this virus is.
So let's talk about my home, for instance, right? So my kids are at home homeschooling. My husband is working from home. I'm the only person as an essential worker that has to go out every day. And so it is now incumbent upon me when I get home to do certain things, right? And even as I traverse throughout the day to ensure that I'm doing my part in terms of personal hygiene and protecting myself so that when I get home, I don't expose my family. And so that's the important thing.
I've heard some persons talk about in terms of protecting yourself and personal hygiene and not allowing you, an essential worker who may be going out and coming home, to persons who are really protecting themselves in order for them not to catch this virus. It's important to even begin by taking off your shoes and leaving them outside. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, certainly. So this is a practice that nurses have been taught from. We were pupils in nursing school that we leave our shoes outside or in the vehicle, right? So you don't carry your germs inside with you because you're walking around on the ground. People spit, you know, you can walk into all kind of things, especially in a hospital environment. And so we leave our shoes at the door. So that is my practice. I leave my shoes at the door and then I transverse through the
outside.
home. Right, outside. And then I use my home shoes inside.
Got it. We would have also seen the proliferation of the production of these masks as well. And I know your passion is educating persons on how to properly wear these masks so that they get full protection. So let's talk about the cloth masks and how they should be worn. And a question that we've been getting a lot too is, are these cloth masks really able to protect us from this virus?
Right. So the answer to that is yes. Of course, to the degree that it would protect you is another question. So the cloth mask is able to protect persons that are not coming into contact with ill patients, ill persons, for instance. The cloth mask is what is suggested to be used. And of course, it works better when you wear your mask and I'm wearing mine. So if we're in close proximity, then we reduce the exposure to each other, because I keep my droplets to myself in my clothes, in my cloth mask, and you keep your droplets to yourself in your cloth mask, right? So a lot of persons, even in the healthcare environment, you know, there's a big talk about the N95 respirator, and they call masks by the general public, but they're actually respirators, right? So they were meant for the use of healthcare professionals in particular instances trying to prevent the transmission of airborne organisms. And so even in the healthcare environment, persons insist that they need the N95s, and really and truly that's not the case in every instance. So the cloth masks are good to use. Of course, you know, there are different precautions that you would take. I brought my cloth mask with me, and I usually keep it in a baggie in my purse when I'm not using it. So this is to protect everything else in my purse from being contaminated with my mask. So I've had these made for when I'm not in the clinical environment, and if I'm in the office or if I'm going to the grocery store, I wear my cloth mask. And this looks much like the surgical mask that we use. You see a lot of persons wearing these, right? So it's designed in a similar fashion. And the air loop, you see the ones that are tied. I mean, people are getting real creative with these. I saw someone with a Velcro strap around the back. It looked real manly and husky and everything. So it allows you to have some kind of designer fashion, you know. People ain't popping up shoes no more. They popping up masks, right? So the important thing with masks, though, are to wear them appropriately. So we've seen persons walking around, for instance, with the mask on the chin, or they'll pull it down just to get a breather around the nose. the rule for the mask is you do not want to touch the front of the mask. So once you put this on, you assume that the front of the mask is the dirtiest part of this mask. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you move the mask on and off your face, you should always use the straps. Okay, so you fix it appropriately. Of course, if you're wearing the N95 that restricts breathing, you're going to be less compliant because this restricts air in and out. And so you don't want to do this, what we see a lot of people doing, because you want to ensure that your nose and your mouth are covered at all times, because your mucous membranes are in your nose where you can breathe in the organism, and of course in your mouth as well. This is not recommended either, because then if I'm an asymptomatic carrier and I'm protecting everybody else from my droplets, now I move my droplets down to my neck, onto my clothing potentially, and at some point when I take this mask off, I may rub my neck, and now I contaminate the environment.
Wow.
Okay, so you always want to handle the mask by the strings or by the strap. Always. If you need a breather, you want to take it off using the strings and the strap. The N95 is something that we all are hearing about now with the shortage worldwide, and the shortage is because in the clinical setting, if you are doing clinical procedures with COVID positive patients or suspected, then there's a potential that the organism is no longer droplet borne or contact, but it's airborne, meaning that it stays stagnant in the air for an extended period of time. The N95 respirator is designed to keep those droplets or those airborne particles out of your respiratory tract. And so this is very important for healthcare workers to have. And so I see we visit a lot of utility companies, and they provide their employees with these. And we try to encourage them, if they can get the regular face masks, to do so, because persons are less compliant with these. It's already like 90 degrees outside.
Right. These are, you know, I like the N95 masks because it's fitted.
Completely sealed around your face, right?
And so you feel the protection as opposed to the cloth mask. But I was telling my producer, Natalie, the other day, I said we have to give kudos to these doctors and these nurses, because those masks are uncomfortable.
Not only that, but they wear these masks along with full body cover. So they're either in a long surgical gown or in a coverall, right? Gloves, boot covers. So it's very exhausting.
And at some point you feel like you can't breathe.
You can't breathe. But there are cone-shaped masks that you can get that will cover and give you a seal if you prefer the seal around your face, right? The N95 has 2 straps, and usually what we see, now I'm going to mess up my hair because I want to demonstrate. Usually what we see is this.
Correct.
Right? So this is not how the mask, they put 2 strings on the mask for a reason, right? So if you're going to wear the N95, you should have both straps around your head. And there's a proper way to put it on and take it off, of course. Healthcare professionals are always trained in the proper way to put on and take off the N95. So the bottom strap is actually supposed to go to the nape of the neck, and the top strap to the top of the head. And of course, you do a seal to ensure that the air isn't moving in and out. There are different types of this mask. So this is also an N95. We call this one the cone-shaped N95 respirator, and this is the beak-shaped. And the beak shape usually appears as if it only has 1 strap. And so if you're not trained in using it, you don't know that the 1 strap should actually be separated into 2. And so it's actually fitted the same way, with 1 strap at the nape of the neck and the other strap at the top of the head. So masks should be worn appropriately, because the designer of the mask, the manufacturer of the mask, made 2 straps, 1 strap, air loops for a reason. So if it has 2 straps, it should be worn with the 2 straps.
Ladidra Ferguson Marsh asks, it says, there is a big debate recently on whether it is necessary or lawful to wear a mask while driving or riding in the car. What is the government's stance on this issue?
I'm not sure what the government's stance is. Well, I should say this. The Prime Minister said you should wear a mask when leaving your home, right? As infection prevention and control, I would say if you're in your vehicle and you need a breather from the mask and you're alone, you can take the mask off.
Or even if you're with family members who live in the same home.
Even if you're with family members who live in the same home. Because, I mean, y'all sharing air anyway, right? So it's safe for you to take the mask off in the vehicle. Most workplaces or business places would advise you to put the mask on when entering, because, of course, they're trying to protect the general environment, etc.
The tests. Let's talk a little bit about how these tests are performed. I know we would have seen some videos, and it's very scary when you look and you see. I think you have.
Yeah, so I have something that looks similar to, well, it actually looks exactly like the viral one. The viral one is actually done.
This would be the swab, correct?
Right, swab. So the viral is usually the red tip, and this one is what we use for bacterial swab. And this is how it looks. So this is the transport medium, and this is the Q-tip that is actually inserted into the nasal cavity and into the nasopharyngeal area. So we want to get way
so how far
in the
back does that go?
As far as it can.
Wow, until you get what?
Until you get any secretion. So they usually do a little maneuvering in the back there to get some secretions, and then they'll place it in this medium and transport it to the lab.
The testing, final question, because I know we soon have to wrap up. The test, these swabs are still taken to New Providence, and then how long, what is the time frame in between? Someone would have taken, you would have taken this swab and secured for it to be sent to Nassau, and you receive the results back.
So transport has been a challenge for us. So initially we had, when general aviation was open, they were going every day. Now I think it's every other day or every 2 days, depending on the demand. And it's usually 24 hours to get the result back once it gets to the lab in Nassau.
Thank you so much, Darrell, for being with us today. I know today's your birthday, so we want to say a happy birthday. A Cleo Roll is also saying to please wish her niece a happy birthday. And Claude Young says to let you know that this test he'll never get. Claude, I'm with you. I'm hoping that we never have to really.
Yeah, I hope we don't have to test anybody else in Grand Bahama, but this is our reality.
Thank you so much for being here, and enjoy the rest of your birthday. Stay with us. We'll be back right after this.
Good day. I am Pastor Eddie Victor. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 57, the Bible records these words: "Thanks be to God. He gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." Although in the Bahamas and the nations of the world we face a common global threat known as the coronavirus pandemic, we have this assurance from the scriptures: no matter what comes against us as an individual or as a nation, God has given us the victory over this crisis. So in the meantime, as we press on to victory, put your complete trust in God. Daily give thanks, walk in faith, and daily declare victory over your life and our country. God promises that we will win. Therefore, you are already a victor.
Bahamian people, help us minimize the risk that coronavirus poses to citizens, residents, and visitors by following these 5 easy steps. Step 1. Wet your hands with clean water, apply soap and lather for 20 seconds by rubbing them together. Include the top of your hands between your fingers and under your fingernails. Rinse your hands under clean water, then dry them with a paper towel or air dry them. Remember to wash your hands before and after eating, preparing a meal, changing a diaper, or caring for the sick, and always after using the bathroom, touching money, shaking hands, or taking out the trash. Step 2. Cough and sneeze in your elbow or upper sleeve, not in your hands, not in the air. Or you can cover your nose and mouth with a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Put your used tissue in the trash bin when you're finished. Remember to wash your hands with soap and clean water after you cough or sneeze. Also, remember never to spit on the ground, roads, or in open spaces. Step 3. Ensure that raw meat is properly handled and cooked thoroughly. Step 4. Avoid sharing drinking glasses, eating utensils like spoons and forks, or sharing personal items such as toothbrushes and towels. Germs can live on surfaces we touch, so wipe and disinfect surfaces where germs can live, and keep your surroundings clean. Step 5. Avoid close contact with anyone showing symptoms of respiratory illness, such as coughing or sneezing. Should you or anyone you know feel that you have been exposed to the coronavirus, contact the surveillance unit of the Ministry of Health immediately. To reach us, call 502-4776, 502-4790, or 502-4737. We want Bahamians and those that live with and visit us to remain safe from the coronavirus. To do this, we need the help of each and every one of you to follow the simple steps we have shared. Let's stay safe, Bahamas.
Welcome back. Now to the business sector. Ever since the government-imposed curfew commenced, local food stores and pharmacies have been buzzing with hundreds of consumers showing up to shop. This influx of customers means a big business for food stores. As Italiol tells us, even the smaller stores are now boasting of a hike in business.
The COVID-19 pandemic has indeed brought on changes across the world. Among the changes, panic buying. For several weeks, customers have flocked to grocery stores, some standing in long lines for hours hoping to get on the inside to purchase some much-needed items. This rush has resulted in big business for the major stores, and for the smaller mom-and-pop stores, they are also benefiting. Over at Stop and Shop in the Caravel Beach community, owner Keith Roll says business for him has been good.
We're doing our best to keep supplies on the shelves and the necessary things that the customers are looking for. We have seen persons coming out in larger numbers and trying to get themselves sorted out. There's still a challenge with the sanitary products like Lysol and hand sanitizers. We from time to time get our hands on some, but that has been, well, as you know, shortage all over.
West Star Convenience Store has been around for some 6 years. The assistant store manager says they've been seeing a high volume of customers and notes that at the beginning of the lockdown, they experienced a bit of a challenge.
With the overcrowds of people and trying to deal with it and trying to comply with the social distance and stuff like that. But we don't have that crowd like how we did at first. It's like a steady flow, and we've been trying to have the customers comply with the distancing and the face masks and all that stuff like that. Since the whole lockdown and the curfew, we had a boost in the sales, so it's been going really good for us.
Over at Tyler's Convenience Store and Express Mart, the story is the same as business levels are up.
They're, always in and out shopping, making sure they pick up the essential items, making sure, and we're making sure that we're well stocked for them also. We, like you can see in the store, we put up the X's. They're 3 to 6 feet in distance, and we ask every, few minutes we have to, check it out, because sometimes the customers adhere to and sometimes they don't, so we have to ensure that they do keep up these rules and regulations that are put in place.
Now, over the past week or two, the long lines at the stores on Grand Bahama have diminished a bit. Nonetheless, the stores remain busy. Italia Hall, ZNS Network News.
Thank you, Talia. Well, the business community continues to take a licking as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Some businesses have collapsed, others have laid off employees until the situation turns around. Recently, the nation's leader made an impassioned appeal to the business owners to do their best to assist their employees who have given loyal service over the years. Well-known businessman Albert Ellie Hepburn joins us now via Zoom to talk about the challenges facing the business sector and his thoughts on the way forward. Ellie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Firstly, you would have heard, I'm sure, the Prime Minister's impassioned appeal, especially when he asked wealthy owners, where is your passion? Where is your, he put it, where's your heart and soul? As he condemned those wealthy owners for laying off persons during this time, and you've been relaying that same message. What are your thoughts on that?
I was in full agreement with the statement and with the message. I do believe that empowering more Bahamians and positioning more Bahamians to obtain greater wealth would in future prevent situations as such. If you're a person that came from a particular place and you see persons that you grew up with, persons that you know, suffering on a certain level, you're definitely going to put things in place to make sure that that doesn't happen, because these people are familiar to you. Every elderly woman that I see in the streets of the Bahamas, anywhere, they remind me of my grandmothers. You know, older women remind me of my mothers. And if you see a young Bahamian child, it reminds you of one of your kids or your nieces or your nephews. So you wouldn't want to see them suffer. So local Bahamian business persons, the ones that are not even wealthy, are the ones that I have seen step up and have applied themselves to assisting within the local community.
There are some business owners who are saying that the world is experiencing this global setback economically. Some of these layoffs are only temporarily, and at this point with COVID-19, they don't know the way forward. Is it really fair to put that pressure on them at this time?
It could be. You know, again, it depends. You know, some companies I've noticed globally actually had immediately started laying off employees. The moment the notification went out that there would be lockdowns, etc. You're telling me you were operating your company on fumes then? Because if your company was operating on any form of profit, why would the first thing you would dispose of other persons? We could have made the same decision because we could have had an excuse to do so. But rather than lay off our employees, we had a conversation, we revised the schedule and their working itineraries, and we actually assisted them by supplying them with a container of essential supplies for themselves and their families so that they can stay protected. I think it goes back to what I said a few moments ago. If you grew up in a place and you know these the people that you're around and it's your community, you sincerely love your community, you wouldn't just rush to lay off employees. You would dispose of, you would cut back, you would put the necessary precautions and whatnot in place. We lost like 30 to 40% of our revenue with husbandry matters as a result of COVID-19. The ports, the airports are closed, so we can't do any crew change. We can't, just a lot of services we made a ton of money off of per annum. We're not able to provide those services now. So we as a company have to cut back. But the one thing that we are that we refuse to do is lay off our people.
And Grand Bahama has had its fair share of challenges. You would have seen what happened during Hurricane Dorian, and even now in this COVID-19 era, I've realized that you are continuing to give back and assist. Talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that you're doing at this point.
Well, we've done quite a bit. We spoke with the Port Authority some weeks ago, and we assisted with providing supplies for the essential workers and just the persons out there who have to be out there in the field. We've been able to help some of the elderly persons in the community, just certain charitable organizations that we've already been a part of. We stepped in just to help, just again, through this challenging and tough time.
And of course, we would have also heard from Murphy Knowles, who talked about a massive donation that you would have given during COVID-19. How important is it for businesses to give back during this time?
I think it's very important for businesses to give back. Again, it's our community, you know, and I go back to what I said about empowering Bahamians. If you were born and raised in Grand Bahama, you love every ounce of your city, of your island, just because it's where you're from. So if you're in a position to do so and to help, you know, I had aunties who were nurses. My mother was a school teacher. You know, I know persons that are out there in the field themselves, putting themselves at risk without even thinking about it. So, you know, to me, to be in that position, I believe everybody has a role to play. And I think everybody should just play their role effectively and do their best to just keep as much of us safe as possible. And then after it's all said and done, then we could resume to business as usual. But in these tough times, we definitely have to stick together. And that's what we saw during Hurricane Dorian. Everybody stuck together. I've never seen unity as such in Grand Bahama myself before that time. And it's sad that sometimes tragedy have to hit in order for us to unify and become one. But nevertheless, we've proven that we can do it. And we've proven that we're resilient. And we've proven that we could get through.
Elsa Carter says, hats off to you, Ellie. I wish a lot of local businesses would follow suit. We've also gotten a comment from Jessica Butler who says, such a great man. Some business owners, though, may say at this point we have to put up for a rainy day. Isn't that smart to do at a point or at a time like this?
Well, what I would say is we should have been putting up for a rainy day prior to this moment. You know, I often tell a lot of individuals that I know personally, like younger employees and business entrepreneurs that I had the opportunity to do some, you know, business with or mentor and whatnot. I do believe that they should all position themselves to pay their salaries for, or to pay their bills for at least a year. So in the event that something was to happen with them financially, such as this incident here that's happening now with COVID-19, they're able to have enough money set aside. So if your monthly bills are about $1,500 a month, if you could save, cut back on certain luxuries that you're engaged in, save up as much money as you could within time, because hurricanes, unfortunately, don't hit us every year. We have the threat, but we've been blessed to avoid them sometimes. So save as much as you could save, and in the event that you get sidetracked with something as such and displaced, then you still have money to maintain and to take care of your children. I mean, this is that I myself did, when I was in my early 20s and whatnot, because to always make sure, because you want to make sure no matter what your kids are fed. That was my priority.
God bless you and cover you under the blood. We salute you here in Grand Bahama. What I think is also important and why you and Bahamians, business Bahamian persons like yourselves should be given kudos is because of the simple fact that there are a lot of foreign companies set up on Grand Bahama raking in millions, even billions, and have already started laying off and have not done the due diligence in terms of taking care of their employees.
Yeah, and see, that's again, it goes to it. This is not where they're from. With the way the world is set up nowadays, I believe that there's nothing that we cannot do. I believe that our country, our nation, and persons within our country could own their own cruise lines. I believe that we could own our own shipyard. I believe that it's just so much that we could do. And if we're doing it, again, you're born and you're raised in this nation. Those persons that own those big companies, I mean, they do business globally, but I can guarantee you that no matter what, they take care of people where they're from. It may not be different charitable organizations, but they have family members there and whatnot. It's easy to cut a place loose or to abandon a place when you don't have a soul tie connection to the place. So that's the biggest issue. The biggest issue is Bahamians, because there are opportunities out there, but more of these opportunities need to be made available to young Bahamians, the younger ones, especially in their 20s. When I was in my 20s and early 20s, late 20s, and early 30s even, it was more difficult for me to position myself to get major deals. And as I got older and older, it became easier. But you have in some countries, you have young men in their early 20s are multi-millionaires, and they're legally multi-millionaires. They didn't have to revert to anything illegal in order to create wealth. You know, and I think the opportunities become available, then you'll have more Bahamians aspiring to go to college and more Bahamians actually educating themselves and positioning themselves to take advantage of those opportunities.
And just before I wrap up, I have one more question. Why do you think there is such a culture of lack of concern to invest back into our communities by these companies that profit so much? That question came from Filet and Wilson.
The lack of concern because they don't care. I can sum that up. They don't care. Why would you invest in a community that you don't care about?
Any final words to fellow entrepreneurs and business owners in terms of...
I think in bad times create great opportunities. So there will be a paradigm shift per se. There will be some businesses, unfortunately, that will close down, and then there will be replacements required. You know, like I said to a few individuals that I know, that the world just needs to start again. There will be voids that need to be filled, and once those voids are filled, if they're not filled by the persons that once held those positions, I can guarantee you they'll be filled by new persons. You know, so it's just the game of life. It don't change just the players.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. Ellie Abigail Higgs says, "One people united in love, service, Bahamas strong and about to get even stronger." Thank you for joining us today. And joining us now, we have Pastor Laquez Williams along with Bishop Godfrey Williams, the sugar man, in studio today to talk about spearheading a breakfast feeding program for Grand Bahamians at this time. Let's talk a little bit about this. We know anytime there is a crisis on the island of Grand Bahama, we can be sure that we will see the Williams family and Jubilee Cathedral at the forefront, ensuring that we are well taken care of. What's the passion behind this? Firstly, let's start with the sugar man.
Thank you so very much, Rashina, for having us here this afternoon. It is very important for us as a church. The church should always lead the role in terms of reaching out to our brothers and sisters, as well as the less fortunate. We don't give to be seen, but the church should be seen giving. And that's what every opportunity that we get, we find ourselves doing. Since Hurricane Dorian, you know, so many persons have been traumatized, and we have played our part in reaching out, as so many other churches. But this is something that we are addicted to, because we have been doing that long before Dorian, giving out to thousands, as a matter of fact. And it's something that we must continue to do. And I find it because of us doing that, we have been even blessed even more. God, he loveth a cheerful giver.
Yes.
So then the other side of the coin is those who are not cheerful, they're not going to give. So I would leave that blank empty for somebody else to fill that in. But it's something we just have that passion, every opportunity where there is a need. And it's a need now. We have benefited for some time with regards to the churches, the community pouring into the church, right? And so it's a time for us as a church to pour back into the community.
Right.
You can't be like the Dead Sea, just taking in and not giving anything out.
And what I appreciate most about you guys is, for example, today, you were doing the breakfast feeding program. You never called for coverage. You didn't say, hey, Zedinus, this is what I'm doing. You're doing it. You're spreading the message so the persons can come, and we literally had to reach out to you and ask you to come on this show just so that other persons in the community who are in need know about what it is that you're doing so that they can have access to this. So I want to say kudos, first of all, because a lot of times people do things to be seen. I must say in this instance, and in most instances, you never even call for coverage. Let's talk about this breakfast feeding program and why it was important for you to do it this week and the response you've been getting, because I know that this would have started from Monday.
Right.
Well, initially we set out to do 250 on the first day because we wanted to follow the rules.
250.
250.
Wow.
That was exceeded by an additional 250 on that same day.
Wow.
So what had happened was because of the need, and obviously the need was so great, so we had to cook some more food, more breakfast, because people keep coming in. We did not only do it at the church on Cathedral Boulevard, but we also did it in 8 Mile Rock. So we, having to go down there, we sent some food up there, and also because not everybody can reach down at the church. So we try to meet people at the point of their need, or where, as the area that they can get to more quicker. So because of that, we just was trying to see how we can help. So since then, we have, on the first day, was over 140 families that was able to be fed breakfast. And then breakfast is one of the most important meals of the day. So we just saw it fit that we can try to help just in this small effort, because I believe, you know, many people wish they could do, but they're not in position to do it right now. But even though we try to do what we can whilst we can do it, I believe just because the need is there, I feel it even worth more. And just to hear some people who come back and say, man, listen, thank you so much. I didn't have anything to eat.
My word. So the need is still great on Grand Bahama.
Oh, yeah.
Months after Hurricane Dorian.
Oh, yeah. And see, we're faced with another challenge because there's some people who don't have no jobs right now. There's some people as well who maybe have a job, but then their pay cut was slashed. So as a result, now they have to find new ways to cope and new strategies to get by so that they can make ends meet. So even with this little help, we had some people who just came to say, man, thank you. I'm not making the same salary, but just because you all show this labor of love to us, we really appreciate it.
And this initiative continues, and after this airs, I'm sure you will have a lot more cooking to do between tomorrow and Friday. But talk to persons who may be watching, who may need breakfast, you know, and of course it's for the needy and not the greedy. So how do they reach out to you, or do they just come to the church at 9 o'clock every morning?
Right, at 9 o'clock, they just meet at the church, right at the church, or they can go to 8 Mile Rock at the Harbor West Shopping Center.
You're in 8 Mile Rock as well?
Right, to our second location down there so that they can go there, and Pastor Ed is down there so they can get the food right from there as well. So we prepare for 150 down there, 350 at the cathedral, but we have to stretch that as well.
Who are you seeing? Is it just mothers or single persons, families as a whole? Who are you seeing coming to this outreach? We're
seeing all of them. Pretty much all of them. We have single parents. We have mothers. There was one lady, she brought about 4 kids in the truck. And everyone, you could see, you know, they needed something, and it really touched my heart to see that. But even just being able to help them at that point was so good, because we also had some groceries as well that we were giving out the groceries, so people were coming in and getting groceries as well during that time.
And we're getting so many comments. Donna Penniman says, we are our brother's keepers. Kanisha Bow, awesome job. Bishop Williams and Pastor LaQuest Williams, I would be remiss so if we allow you to leave without at least leaving us with a word of hope for the country at this time. Can you do that for me, Bishop Williams?
Yeah, I just want to say to those who are viewing this telecast that this too will pass. Dorian came and Dorian has left. What I want to say to the viewers to endure to the end. All of us have been traumatized at some point or the other. No one has been exempted. What has happened is that if you look at this, every denomination has been impacted by this virus. So which simply means God is speaking to the leaders, all of us, that the leaders are the ones, forget about the denomination, whether you're Pentecostal, Charismatic, Baptist, Anglican, Catholic, no matter who you are. This is the opportune time for the leaders, for us to come together in solidarity and in prayer and fasting, for God to then download to us in terms of us downloading to the membership what God is saying in this hour and what he wants to do in and through us. And I believe once we take this opportunity to do that, there's going to be a turnaround because it will no longer be business as usual, not in the Bahamas. Church won't even be as usual, but we have to be prepared as the body of Christ and even those of our membership to hold out. They must endure to the end.
Thank you so much, Bishop, for that.
To the end.
Thank you so much for that word, and I pray that God continues to bless your ministry as you continue to give back to the Grand Bahama community. And that is our hour for today. And so as we wrap, we want to say stay safe, stay healthy, continue to physically distance yourself. We will be back tomorrow, coming to you live from our studios here in Freeport, Grand Bahama. I'm Shashina Wolf-Parkinson. Good afternoon.